What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Before the Whistle. I'm your host, Maddy, and we are back to our regularly scheduled Friday episodes here on this show. Looking forward to Tulane's matchup this weekend at East Carolina, taking on the Pirates. The 1-7 Pirates at that, who are 0-4 in the American, but it's definitely not a team to underestimate, particularly with their ability to stop the run. They're third in the conference, I believe, allowing an average 120 rush yards per game, and have only allowed 2 100-yard rushers on the season. Several games this year, too, where the entire team was held to under 100 rushing yards. And something they do really well on those run fits is bringing down guys from the second and third level of the field. Their leading tackler on the team is their safety, Julius Wood, who is also fifth in the conference at that. So for Tulane to be a team that relies on setting up the run to establish, the run establishes the pass, especially with Tulane's propensity and really running play action and how well that's worked for them. This is really going to be an intriguing test. And I think, again, when you're going into a stadium where a team has only won one game all year, haven't beat an American team, and it would pretty much change, I think, the feeling of their entire season if they were able to knock off the top dogs in Tulane. And I just think that I've talked about this a lot on the show, but the psychology of the game just sticks out a lot more to me on the college level than it does in the NFL. And while that can lead to, I think, a little more of a pendulum swing in those high and low moments, I think this kind of game really motivates those guys in a way that you can't really replicate in the NFL, with everything going into kind of those feelings of losing. And I think former players offer one of the better perspectives on that. I've spoken about my time as a soccer player, and while it's apples to oranges in the game of football, again, knowing what it's like to lose and lose often, having an offense that can't score in soccer as a defender, that meant if I was giving up one goal, the game was over. And that took on a different kind of psychology as well, understanding injury and just everything involved in when there's a lot of turnover and chemistry with the team. And so I think that this really was a good episode to bring on my guest, former ECU wide receiver Terrance Copper, who also went on to play in the NFL. We go over all of those teams, including the Saints, where he hosts a podcast now with my producer Dave Grubb, Believe in Saints, and hosts the pregame show and postgame show for East Carolina, which is a 3-hour pregame show. As people that have a 1-hour pregame show ourselves, that's pretty wild. But going over, I think, what really has been going on in between the lines here at East Carolina this season, and why it's kind of gone into this 1-7 year where they played Michigan hard, they've played teams in the conference hard. It just hasn't, unfortunately, spelled more than one win for them. And so, again, I just think the former player perspective and just having that understanding of the amount of turnover, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. And I'm a defense person, but having someone that really has their finger on the pulse as a former offensive player themselves, I really enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot about ECU. And with that, I'm happy to welcome Terrance Copper on the show. I'm joined now by Terrance Copper. Terrance, I could do the intro here, but why don't you just kind of tell the listeners a little about yourself?
So I played in the NFL. I retired in my 10th year. I played with New Orleans. I played 3 with New Orleans, 2 with the Cowboys, a half a year with Baltimore, and 5 with Kansas City. I played at East Carolina University right now. Not right now, but I played at East Carolina University. And right now I do the pregame and postgame show for East Carolina University. I also host I co-host a show with Dave Grubbs with Believe in Saints as well. So that is me right now. That's what we're doing.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's really a lot going on here. You said you do the sideline as well?
Say it again?
You said that you do the sideline reporting as well?
No, I do the pregame show and the postgame show.
I got you. And so kind of like being a former athlete and covering a college team, I'm curious because ECU is almost kind of having the flip version of the couple of seasons for Tulane where they went 2-10 and then 12-2, whereas you guys are kind of on the other side of that. And kind of prepping for those broadcasts, does having kind of that perspective of a former athlete help you kind of cover teams when they're not doing so well?
It helps tremendously, because not only are you looking at the X and O's and the schemes that's being ran and what the outcome is of the game, but you also know you as a former player, so you know the feel of it. You know the mentality of the players in the locker room, whether we're winning right now or whether we're losing. So you know both sides of the spectrum, and you can also kind of put that into the different things you're talking about, just to give the audience a good perspective of how not only a team is doing, but how individually kids at that age are thinking and what are going through their minds.
That's something because I grew up really primarily following the NFL. I also went to Tulane, but when I went there, they weren't doing so well. And so I never really followed along with college football until taking this job. But it's really striking to me, I think, just how, for lack of a better term, young college players are, and that, they're not adults. They're not doing this as their full-time job. We kind of joked, Jarius Monroe, one of our cornerbacks, was going off to class. He's like, yeah, I'm a student athlete, but it's true. That's just a completely different kind of mentality at that age. And I think you just kind of feel those losses a little more. So to me, at least, the psychology of the game definitely has a little, I think, greater perspective in college, at least as someone that hasn't played.
Oh, definitely. And even when it comes to the kids, their mentality when it comes to how they take losses, how they move on from losses. Like I said, I played in the NFL as well. And when you lose, don't get me wrong, you're upset that you lost. You're mad, you're upset about it. But you know that paycheck is coming the next week or that following week. You got a paycheck coming. But in college, your whole mentality is totally different. You don't care about a paycheck right now. You're just worried about a win. You don't care if a paycheck is coming next week because it's not unless you got an NIL deal. But for the most part, most of the kids don't. And so the love of the game, just that raw love of the game, is fueling them to continue to want to keep pushing and keep fighting, which I'm not saying it's not that way in the NFL, but in NFL, you have other perks that come along whether you win or you lose.
Right. And it's a good point, too, I think, about NIL, because I think everyone just immediately kind of says, oh, well, they have NIL now. But again, to your point, depending on the school, the exposure, and quite frankly, the position, I mean, that just and it's the same thing if you really look at contracts in the NFL. But yeah, I'm definitely with you. And that's why I say I'm always really glad that I joined the broadcast team before the 2 and 10 year. And because I felt like I would have been missing just such important context of how really the emotions of the game just, again, matter at that level, but really played into, Tulane's run last year. And honestly, there's a game, like I remember ECU games very, very clearly over both of those seasons, both when you guys really dominated us at home with you guys in the 2 and 10 year. And then even though last year, I think Tulane won 24-9, I recall, I looked this up, Tajay Spears had 53 rush yards against you guys, and Michael Pratt lost 16 of those. So this has always been a matchup that I think I'm always really curious about. But what kind of happened this year at ECU? I know there's so much turnover, and maybe you could kind of give some insight, again, being a former wide receiver, having so many changes at quarterback and losing the size of those wide receivers and really that impact.
That's the biggest thing, the biggest difference for us, and that's why our community is so in an uproar right now when it comes to our team. And we're still supporting our team, but the community is upset about it because you go from 2 years in a row, we go to bowl games, and then we all of a sudden we drop to now we're wanting whatever, So it's that part, it's the drop off, the drastic drop off of us going from 2 bowl games. Then the third season, it's a drastic drop off, so it's only winning 1 game so far. So that's where the frustration is coming in. But you have to look at it for what it is. We had Holden Ayler is our quarterback that we had for 5 or 6 years. He's graduated. He's left. He's with the Seahawks in the practice squad. Our running back, Keith Mitchell, that rushed for over 1,000 yards last year, our most dynamic running back, he's gone. He's on the Ravens roster. Then all 3 of our top receivers last year are gone, whether they transferred or whether they're on rosters as well. And then you got to look at it. We had 1 offensive line returning from last year. So that right there can tell you the struggle or why we're struggling so much offensively. Now, do I feel like our coaching staff could have done a better job of preparing the next quarterback to step in? I do feel like we could have done a better job while Holton was still here, preparing the other quarterbacks to get ready to step in. But we had a lot of guys that left. We had a lot of coaching change as well. We got a lot of different coaches on the staff, so that takes time to build that continuity. So to me, I just feel like this year was a tough year to have a bad year, even though we have a lot of different pieces that's missing. But we still should be in a better position than we are right now.
The offensive line comment was the one that really made me pause because, I mean, in complete contrast to that, I think you could look at Tulane in a similar way where Keaton Mitchell, Tajay Spears, I mean, I remember Keaton Mitchell was a very bad day in Greenville the last time, thanks to him. But Tulane only had to replace one of their offensive line members from last year. And unless it's your center, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's not your center, that to me is the most important position of turnover at that. I guess it doesn't necessarily matter as much if you have kind of that changing of the hand at quarterback, but Tulane also in a way is almost kind of slyly benefited, I guess, from Michael Pratt having some injury stretches, and that you have had the ability to at least legitimately prepare someone like Kai Horton to not only be able to step in mid-season, but, whatever kind of happens next year, again, you've really seen game time action. And I remember Holton Ahlers being built like a linebacker, and there might have just kind of been a point where his durability really kind of got the better of him. But I was also kind of, watching one of the shows you did on radio. I believe it was after the Michigan game, and just really, again, talking about the wide receivers and kind of needing to step up. And again, it's easier said than done when you're changing the hand at quarterback and you're still kind of getting there in the running game. But has that something that's at least kind of improved as the season's gone on, or what can you really say about that group?
I think we still have improvement to go. We still have ways to go when it comes to our receiving core. Me personally, I don't feel like we have a number one receiver. And when I say a number one receiver, it's kind of cliche what everybody's saying. QB1, he's the best receiver on the team. I don't think we have a receiver one on our team. I think we have receiver 3, some receiver 2s on our team that are playing the receiver 1 position. So we're not making it complicated. I don't think we have the talent. I think we have the talent, but we haven't developed it yet. We have some guys that's young, like Sewell. He's a redshirt freshman. He's number 5 for us. He's going to be a great receiver for us, but right now he's just so young. He's just young. He's still making plays, but you also see where the young and immaturity comes for our receivers. But we drop a lot of balls. And we drop balls to where, and sometimes the balls we do catch are balls we're catching and we're going straight to the ground, where we could get yards after catch with that ball if we're more seasoned, more polished. But the fact we're so young, we're just so used to more possession catches, catching, getting down.
Yeah, that makes sense too. And again, it just sticks out where Tulane having the continuity of the quarterback and those same receivers, and Tulane's never really, at least since I've been there, had a number one receiver that's outwardly defined. And you could probably make an argument for Deuce Watts, but you could probably make one for Shea Wyatt last year. And same goes for Jaquan Jackson, I think, and Lawrence Keys this year. But again, that can all kind of work as long as you have a little more chemistry there. But I know that really this matchup for Tulane, I think the biggest test is going to be against your guys' run defense. I mean, despite having a 1-7 record, you guys are 3rd in the conference against the run and have only allowed 2 100-yard rushers all year. And, even games like SMU, I looked up, held them to, I believe, 58 yards on the ground. And SMU has had a decent outing in all of their other games so far. And so that's been something that Tulane has really relied on this year. And it's been incredible, again, following Tajay Spears, to have Mekhi Hughes. He's had 4 consecutive games now where he's gone over 120 yards. But for them to only be allowing 2 100-yard rushers, what at least is kind of the bright spots about the defense that you could point to?
The bright spot about the defense is our defense. And when I say that, we have a solid defense. Don't get me wrong, we give up too many explosive plays, especially in the pass game. We give it up way too much. That is our Achilles when it comes to our defense. giving up explosive plays. But we are a very stout defense. If, like I said, if we can hang our hat on anything, we can hang our hat as our defense is going to come out and play solid day in and day out. And that's what you want from the defense. The only thing about that is our defense has not really shown how well we really can play because our offense has not played complementary games yet. The fact that our offense can't score points and we're struggling to put points up and sustain drives is leaving the defense out there a little bit longer than we should be out there. And it's putting defense in tough situations to where if the offense was more compatible and playing real continuity football, you would really get to see how good this defense really is because we really have a good defense.
Yeah, I mean, is it Julius Wood? That's his name. Leading the team in tackles. I mean, he's 5th in the conference. I actually remember his name from 2 seasons ago. Because just again, what really sticks out about your guys' run defense is the fact that you have those 2nd and 3rd level guys really coming down and just kind of swarming the box like that. And I think again, to have the leading tackler on a team, especially one that is so staunch against the run, be a safety, that says, again, I think a lot about the defense. But in terms of kind of how are they more of a kind of rush the passer game, or is it dropping a lot more guys back into coverage, more man or zone heavy, or what's kind of been the defensive identity?
So, Coach Harrell does a great job we run zone, but he does a great job of zone blitzing. So where you really can't tell who's coming, who's not coming. So he do a great job of zone blitz stuff. We blitz secondary blitz from linebacker depth. We may pull out a DN and blitz the backer. So we blitz from different places. We bring different guys, and that is our MO. We bring the blitz, and we are stout with the run game. Like I said, when it comes to the passing game, when it comes to our passing coverage, we giving up a lot of explosive plays passing, but the heart of our defense is our run defense.
Well, and the thing too for Tulane is that play action really works well for them, but in order to set that up, you have to be able to establish the run. So that's going to be kind of really interesting to watch again. And then just kind of looking at the UTSA matchup last week, I mean, I looked and it was, I believe, like 9 total sacks on each side of the ball. And I think Tulane's kind of been running a similar defense where you're not really sure where that, again, that pressure is coming from. And then I guess kind of the third phase would be special teams. Again, for kind of having those struggles on offense, is it something that is more of an issue in the red zone, or is that kind of at least a shining spot, or is that kind of where your guys' kicker comes in?
That's when our kicker comes in, and he's been struggling as well. So he's been missing field goals, tough field goals, to where if he makes those, that game outcome could change. And sometimes he misses them early. He missed them early in the games, and those missed field goals come back to bite us later on in games when the games are close. So, like I said, right now we're struggling right now when it comes to putting points up, whether it be special teams being consistent making field goals, or whether it be just offense capitalizing on drives. And that is the Achilles heel of what's going on this year is we can't put points up, and that's just what it is. That is what it is. We're struggling right now with just trying to score.
That's true. And then I guess the turnover margin would be something that is definitely going to be something to look at in this game. For having a staunch run defense, do they punch the ball out fairly often, even kind of struggling in pass coverage, or what's their ability to really turn over the ball been like on the defensive side?
We actually get turnovers. We actually get picks. We get interceptions. We got a pick 6 last week. So defense, we get fumble recoveries. Defense is doing everything. Of course, defense has to get better because you got to continue to get better and work on your craft. But our defense is giving our offense a lot of different opportunities to make plays. It's just we have to capitalize offensively, and I keep going to it. But I'm telling you, you're gonna see when you come to the game, or you're gonna be doing the media on the game. So you'll be to the game, so you'll see it for yourself. You will see how defensively we're gonna be okay defensively, but offensively, that is where we're struggling at. I think that is where Tulane I think Tulane wins this game. I think it's gonna be a close game, But I think Tulane pulls this game out, even though I'm a Pirate and I want the Pirates to win, but I just don't see us pulling this game out. And it's because offensively, I don't know if we're going to be able to score the points that we need to score to beat Tulane.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I think there's always those teams where despite what their record is, because I mean, Tulane was a 2-10 team in that 2-10 year, but there were several games where it was a one score or less game. Our final loss was something like 3 points, I think. And the teams that we hung with, you know, they were leading Cincinnati at halftime with Kai Horton at quarterback, which is why I've never really been that high on Desmond Ridder, to be entirely honest with you. Might be a little unfair to have a one game bias, but you know, they hung with UCF that year. It wasn't a blowout against them in the bounce house. And so of all teams, I think Tulane is one of the ones that understands not to underestimate a team based on record. And I'm with you where, I mean, Tulane should win the final games on their schedule just based on the talent they have and the way we've seen them perform in these tougher games earlier on this year. But this is definitely, again, one that for that run defense stopping alone is definitely, I think, one that fans are looking closely at, and something that has been, and I'll kind of end this kind of on this, but something that has been a struggle for Tulane has been that third quarter, coming out of halftime and playing strong and then kind of needing to play catch up in the fourth quarter. Is there any advantage to that for ECU, or has it just kind of not been there in either half, or are they a team that's able to kind of come out and capitalize on a slow start, may it be?
You know, it always comes back to our offense. Yeah. Defensively, we are one of the most toughest teams to play against, and you're going to see it. Offensively, it don't matter what quarter it is. Offensively, we're just struggling. I mean, we have certain times where we look good, but it may last for maybe a series, but then we go back to struggling. You know, we go back to struggling. So the biggest thing for us, if we can get our run game going, if we can really get our run game going and limit how many passes our quarterbacks have to throw, because we run a 2-quarterback system. And for me, anytime you run a 2-quarterback system means you don't really have a solid quarterback. And that's what it means for me. And right now it's showing that. It's showing we don't have a solid quarterback. Both of them do different things. They're better with different things. So right now we're just trying to figure it out offensively.
I mean, you're adding that on now to, again, 4 new players on the offensive line and that huge turnover at wide receiver. I mean, again, I think context really helps fans just kind of understand what's going on here. And again, as a team, someone that had to cover kind of a team that's really not doing well and still kind of trying to find the context and bright spots, I mean, something I could definitely understand. And again, well, I think this is, it's going to be funny to me because I feel like this is going to end up being something like a 17-7 win or something. And Tulane fans are going to be upset about that. But everything that you've described about this defense, I mean, again, this seems like one of the tougher defenses that they're going to have to face. But if Tulane's defense it shows that they're not able to contain what you've described as kind of a chaotic set of turnover at almost every position, that would certainly be an issue. So that this to me is going to be a weird litmus test for Tulane, almost in a very bizarre way. But again, I just think that you can't devalue defense and well-timed things. Like you said, an interception, a pick six, those kind of things can change a matchup. And I'm just looking forward again to kind of going back to that environment. I remember y'all have a really good, and has the attendance been okay through this struggle, or is that something that's kind of been an issue?
No, attendance hasn't. You know,
that's good.
Like, we still support our Pirates. We still support them. You know, we just want them to do better. You know, so the attendance has been good. I want to say, I think we still lead the conference in attendance.
Wow.
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But you got to take your hat off to Tulane. Like, you kind of mentioned a little earlier, when I was at East Carolina, Tulane was trash, if I can just say that word.
Yeah.
Tulane was terrible. They was terrible. But for them to come out and these last couple of years to come out and do the things that they've done and turn their program completely around, not just the football program, but the basketball program is turning around as well, or it's turning around. You know, so just the fact to see Tulane do that after being as bad as they were for so long, you know, you got to take your hats off to them because they're doing something right over there.
Yeah, no, I'm what years were you at ECU? Just out of curiosity.
So I was there from 2000 to 2004.
Okay. Yeah. And I was at Tulane from 2012 to 2016. So that just goes to show you where we had the same kind of outlook on the school. But again, I think a lot of the Tulane fan base is either 80, they're 80, but on the older side, or just this kind of new fan base of this kind of student class. But there was really this just kind of giant lost generation gap of it not being a very good football program. So it's still kind of sinking in for us, coming in, having kind of the New Year's Six lane in your sights, but still having the context of, again, if nothing else, having that 2-10 year under my belt. There's never going to be a time where I'm going to walk into a stadium and just say like, oh, Tulane for sure has this one, because I'm sure USC thought the same thing going into the Cotton Bowl. So all that to say is football is always a game of 60 minutes, and I'm looking forward to this one being a competitive one.
Yeah, I am too. I get a chance to see, I think Carter Sheraton, he coaches down there, coaches receivers down there. He was the assistant receiver coach when I was in New Orleans. So we got a little connection there as well. So I look forward to seeing this game, not just because I get to see some old faces, but I get a chance to see, we get to see the Pirates come out again. And I think it's going to be another tough game. I think y'all pull this out by 10. I think 14-24 will be the final score of this game. But I think it'll be a good game. I think y'all pull away late.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it might not be the blowout that fans are hoping for, but doesn't matter. It's just ultimately what wins you football games. So we'll definitely connect when I'm there in Greenville in a few days.
Sounds good. Look, I look forward to seeing you when you get here.
Awesome. All right. All right, y'all. Again, that was Terrance Copper, former ECU Pirate wide receiver, played in the NFL and hosts the pregame and postgame show for the Pirates, along with a bunch of other duties, such as the life of a lot of sports broadcasters, myself included. I really enjoyed his perspective on this episode, again, especially just with the context of ECU going through those years of success and kind of having that expectancy, and then things not really going their way this year. And just, again, the psychology of losing, I think he could really offer just a great perspective as, again, a former player. And that's something I kind of talked about in the intro. But it's something that, and we talked about this briefly once we wrapped up recording, and he mentioned that this was a good point. It was something that kind of came to me in the middle of our discussion. And then that if there is any team that understands where ECU is at right now, it is Tulane. And again, that 2-10 season was not that long ago. ECU was one of those teams that they met, I believe, early on in the year. I think the story went, Ole Miss, we finally came home after Birmingham. They got really kind of pummeled by UAB at home, then went out to ECU, and the same story happened. And a lot of that was Keaton Mitchell, but just, again, being on the other side of that coin, and that final win for Tulane that year coming in week 11. The season is not over. And just because a team is 1-7, that's one, again, win away from where Tulane was at that point last year, 2 seasons ago. And again, granted, Tulane beat USF that year, who wasn't that great of a football team, but the 1-0 mentality does not really roll over for anyone. And I just think, again, the fact that 1-0 mentality was born out of this, I know it existed before that, but becoming this team's identity really after that Southern Miss loss last year, where they overlooked a worthy opponent, it's something that I think is just added on to the fact that they know ECU, they played them the last 2 seasons, and it's been a tough matchup both times. And just being on that other side of the coin, knowing how hungry they are for another win on the season. So I think this is going to be, again, a little more of a tough matchup than the records might show, even though, again, they perfectly mirror one another. And it sticks out to me as well, too, that the culture at ECU, I was really happy to hear that despite everything going on with all this turnover and them not doing well, that their fans are still really in attendance. Because to me, that's my favorite part of going to away games is kind of getting heckled and just having that hostile environment, one that I think the Green Wave really does thrive off of. And so this will be an interesting game. The defense, all things considered, should really be able to shut down ECU's offense, from how Terrance described the fact that they're still kind of running a 2-quarterback system this late in the year. It's easier said than done. Tulane, again, this is going to be a very interesting case study in Tulane's ability to replace such a generational talent in Tajay Spears immediately on the heels with Mekhi Hughes, because it just goes to show you it's easier said than done at somewhere like ECU. But they also lost Holton Ahlers at quarterback, who has been an old reliable for them. And 4 out of the 5 members on their offensive line, that was just astonishing to me. And they had these giant wide receivers last year. CJ Johnson, I remember, but there were like 3 of them that were just twice the size of, at that point, Jaden Kennedy and Lance Robinson starting at those cornerback roles, and Macon Clark at that nickel now anchor role. So all things considered, this should be a feast for Tulane's defense. It's Tulane's offense that I think really needs this outing more, but at the same time are really going to have to grind through a formidable defense. I mean, when I asked him the bright point about the defense and his answer was the defense, I mean, he's correct. Again, to have the 3rd rushing defense only having a 1-7 record, but it's just, again, if you look at the games, there were some games where it just looked like the rushing yards got so away from them. Like in their, I think 10-7 loss to Charlotte had more than 200 rush yards on the ground. So that was a little mystifying, but they were apparently able to hold them out of the end zone relatively often. And he said that their field goal kicker has been having issues missing. All it takes is a good game by your field goal kicker. But Tulane has had Mekhi Hughes now. He is the only player in Tulane history besides Matt Forte and Tajay Spears to now have 4 consecutive games with 120 plus rushing yards and a touchdown. And it continues to have a career high week after week, 153 yards on the ground in Rice. And so this will be a really solid test, and really, I think, show a lot too about how Tulane kind of shapes out their running back room. Is it going to be Mekhi Hughes out there for every snap in the way we saw them do with Tajay in Cincinnati? Or is this a game where we might see a little more Arnold Barnes or some more shoddy Clayton Johnson? It'll certainly be curious. And seeing how the wide receiving group really kind of takes advantage of that if the run game isn't able to get established early on. And I think what everyone's going to be looking at for Tulane is that 3rd quarter. And it'll be very interesting. Gary Smith with NOLA.com wrote an article on this earlier this week, and it's something that we on our live radio broadcast are going to be kind of looking at and reporting on. Is Tulane is palpably making changes and addressing and acknowledging the fact that the starts at a halftime have not been the way they wanted. I think that you couldn't ask more than for a team or coaching to acknowledge something and then make tangible steps to try to fix that problem. That's something that is not something you always see. And now you've seen Willie Fritz do this in a lot of ways, be it getting rid of an entire coaching staff after a 2-10 year, or trying something else out, even though they've still won the last 3 games. It just goes to show you that they're still striving for that higher standard. And so what they're going to be doing now is coming out of halftime and treating it as if it's the first half, having a full-fledged warm-up, possibly running a little bit of some plays. So it'll be really interesting to see A, how that kind of transpires, and then B, if there is any correlation to a stronger start out of halftime. But this is definitely going to be a game that favors both defenses. As a defense lover, I'm looking forward to that, but it's going to be a really good game, and I really hope y'all are able to tune in. Again, if you want to listen to us on the radio beginning at 1:30 Central Time on 104.1 The Spot, you can also go to the Tulane Athletics Varsity Network apps, and we are on Sirius XM. Depending on where you are, it's either channel 113 or 207. Again, that's always as an hour before kickoff, which is at 2:30, and we'll be on at 1:30 previewing this matchup. And if I do have time, I would love to run over and get on ECU's pregame show as well. And if so, I will tweet all of that out. But again, I'm just looking forward to going back up to Greenville and getting a really good 1-0 to cap off this week. So with that, y'all, I'll see you with my post-game analysis next Tuesday.